Welcome to the Quest OnDemand video demonstration on how to add tenants and grant admin consents. The ability for on-demand service principals to access and operate with tenant assets requires explicit permissions. The tenant administrator grants these permissions through consents. Each tenant that is added has granted consent to the initial core. Basic permission set to the on-demand service principal. Additional consents are required to work with different features, services of on-demand migration. After logging into the on-demand migration, you will be taken to the Choose an Organization page. Once you have selected the organization you would like to work with, you will be taken to the home page, which gives you an overview of all your tenant statuses. If you have just created your organization, you will see the following page, as there are no tenants added yet. To add tenants, you should click on Tenants in the navigation panel on the left-hand side. Each on-demand migration project needs a source and target tenant. These are commercial tenants. For users in the United States deployment region, on-demand. Migration offers two options depending on the type of Microsoft 365 tenant that you want to add. Commercial, GCC tenant, or GCC high tenant. If you would like to add a GCC or GCC high tenant as your source tenant, a special waiver needs to be provided and sent to the Quest Product Manager for approval and implementation. To get this waiver, you need to contact your account manager who will provide it for you. As you can see, I have already added a tenant, which is going to be my source tenant. In this video, I am going to add the target tenant as the demonstration. On this page, you have the ability to add a new tenant by clicking the Add Tenant button in the top left corner of the page. Once you click on it, you will get a pop-up window about the following step, which is going to be that you will be taken to the Microsoft sign-in page to sign in with an account that has Global Administrator role assigned to be able to grant the required consents for your tenant. I am going to hit OK and sign in with my admin account. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, is supported for tenant administrators when granting consents and permissions. After completing the authentication with the admin account, a page opens with the list of permissions that you are granting. The first consent you are going to grant when adding a tenant is for core, basic. I am going to show you how to grant consent for another service. Just click on the Edit Consents link and you can see that the basic status is granted because it was done when adding the tenant. Depending on what services you have bought and have access to, you will be able to grant additional consents here. Just click on the Grant Consent link, enter the credentials that have permissions to grant the consent for on-demand migration to use this service. One thing to note, sometimes Microsoft makes changes or permissions with their APIs or tenants, and this can break admin consent between on-demand and your tenant via our enterprise applications. If you ever get errors with permissions, simply re-grant consent, and most of the time it will fix the issue. It is not a regular occurrence. When Microsoft introduced new features, or we expand our migration abilities to include additional content, you may also be required to re-grant consent, as new consents have been added. Finally, consent grants have a lifespan of 90 days. After 90 days, you will need to re-grant consent to continue. The lists of the minimum consents and permissions required by the various on-demand migration service principals for managing tenants, Microsoft 365 objects, and other migration services can be found in our on-demand migration user guide. For more details about permissions used by each service principal, see our on-demand migration permissions reference guide. When you have granted the consent, you can verify that the service principals were successfully created in the tenant. You must verify both source and target tenants. Log into the Azure Entra admin portal, click Enterprise Applications from the navigation pane, then click All Applications, filter the list if necessary, and verify the list of service principals. Well, that concludes our video demonstration, and thank you for watching.